separate screens here, so pay more attention to the PowerPoints than you do to me. But so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining me tonight. I know this is an unusual time in our history as we're facing a lot of unknowns and uncertainty right now, but hopefully I'll be able to give you some information tonight that will empower you to take control of your health. There's never been a better time to look at our healthcare system and the state of health in our country than now. I think we'd all agree that the current model of health that we have here in the United States is broken, and that it's something that needs to be reformed. This makes it even more imperative that you understand what health is, where it comes from, and how we get it and maintain it. Tonight, I'm going to talk specifically about diabetes and how we can reverse high blood sugars without the use of drugs or medications. But really, this information is foundational in all aspects of health and wellness. If you know someone who needs to hear this information, please send them the link right now so that they can get on this webinar. I am recording this, so I will make it available on my YouTube channel, and I'll make sure that those of you that registered for this event get the links for the following presentation. For those that are not familiar with me, I am Dr. Greg Dykes. I'm a native of Tuscaloosa. I went to Tuscaloosa Christian School in Cottondale. I graduated from the University of Alabama in 2004 and went on to Life University, where I got my doctorate in chiropractic. After graduating from Life, I moved back to Tuscaloosa in 2010, where I've been practicing and serving my hometown for the past decade. I'm a chiropractor and wellness doctor, which means I help people find natural solutions to their health conditions without the use of drugs and surgery. I'm married to my high school sweetheart, Paige Kepler Dykes. Paige is a registered dietitian. She has her master's degree in food and nutrition, and we work together to help educate, equip, and empower people to live their healthiest life possible. Paige and I have two beautiful children, as you can see in the picture on the right there. So why am I here tonight, and why am I putting on this seminar or this webinar? Really, it has a personal meaning for me. Growing up, I experienced the effects of diabetes firsthand. My grandmother, my mom's mom, was a type 2 diabetic, and I watched her struggle with balancing her blood sugars on a daily basis. Ultimately, it took her life in 2007 or 2008, where she died from heart failure as a result of her diabetes. About 5 years later, 2012 or 2013, my mom was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic as an adult, which is very rare that you have someone that in their 60s, late 50s, early 60s, become or get diagnosed with a type 1 diabetes. And I watched her struggle to control her blood glucose, even when eating foods that are normal or shouldn't spike her blood sugar that do. So after my mom was diagnosed, I made a conscious decision to do everything in my power to keep from becoming diabetic. I started reading several books and research articles, and I began to make some lifestyle changes myself that would help keep me and prevent me from hopefully becoming a diabetic. What I'm going to share with you tonight is what I've learned over the last 10 years of helping people manage and even reverse their diabetes and blood sugar issues. I think that it's important for us to start by talking about some statistics on diabetes. First, over 30 million people in the United States have diabetes. That's more than 25% of those 65 years of age and older are diabetic. And every year, 1.5 million new people are diagnosed with diabetes. It's estimated there are more than 10 million undiagnosed cases, which means which those are people that are walking around with diabetes and don't even know they have it. 84 million Americans are pre-diabetic, which means they're hyperglycemic or on their way to full-blown diabetes. So as you can see by the picture here, 1 out of 11 people, or 1 out of 4, don't even know that they have diabetes, right? Pre-diabetes affects 80 plus million Americans. About 1/3 of the population is pre-diabetic. or 9 out of 10 people with prediabetes don't even know they have it. So again, it's a bigger issue than we think, or that we may realize. In both human and economic terms, it's our nation's most costly health condition. Diabetes is the leading cause of kidney failure, blindness in adults, amputations. It's a major risk factor for heart disease, stroke, birth defects, and it shortens the average life expectancy by up to 15 years. Diabetes costs Americans more than $300 billion annually in health-related expenditures, and one in every $7 spent on healthcare is spent on diabetes. Over the next decade, these numbers are expected to grow and increase as the number of people affected by diabetes continues to increase at an accelerating rate. At present, there's no method to prevent or cure diabetes, and available treatments have only limited success in controlling its devastating consequences. According to the AMA, current success rates for reversing type 2 diabetes is only about 1%. The facts about diabetes leave no doubt about its seriousness. It's the 7th leading cause of death in the United States, with over 250,000 deaths annually, and it's estimated that only 35 to 40% of diabetes-related deaths get reported. So this means the number of diabetes-related deaths is probably more like 750,000, which would make it the #1 leading cause of death in the United States. So the problem is, 10% of Americans, as we've mentioned earlier, 30 million Americans are affected or have diabetes. Over 50% of Americans are insulin resistant, which is a precursor for diabetes. So we have a huge blood sugar problem in the United States right now. There's no quiz after this, so I'm not throwing these numbers out for you to try to remember. I'm just throwing them out so that you understand how big of a problem this is. I just want you to know there's a lot more to diabetes than maybe what you've been told or what you've learned, right? So obviously, the best ways to measure diabetes is through a blood test. An A1C is the most accurate way to measure what our blood sugar is doing over a period of time. But there's also good ways to, if you haven't been tested, to kind of look at it and go, okay, well, am I susceptible to diabetes? Maybe do I have pre-diabetes, or am I insulin resistant? And one of those ways is to look at abdomen to hip ratio. So if your abdomen is larger than your hips, then there's a good chance that you have diabetes or insulin resistance. So what are some of the symptoms of insulin resistance or diabetes? Look at the chart here, or the slide here. We talk about cardiomyopathy, which is like irregular heart rate or heartbeats, heart issues. We've got neurological changes, maybe things like numbness, tingling in the arms, feet, pain, urinary frequency, increased urinary frequency, increased intra-abdominal fat. So that's fat around the belly or the waistline, elevated blood sugars, hypertension. How many of you know somebody that's taking a medication for blood pressure, right? Some people are taking 2 or 3 medications for blood pressure, right? So high blood pressure, what we have found is a blood sugar issue. If you're taking 2 or 3 medications and your blood pressure is still elevated, then we've got to look at what's going on with that glucose and those blood sugars. Elevated triglycerides. I can't tell you how many times I get blood work back on patients, and they come in, they say, well, my doctor put me on cholesterol medication because my cholesterol was high. And when I take a look at the blood work that they got, it's not really a cholesterol issue so much as it is a blood sugar issue. Their triglyceride levels will be high, cholesterol will be high, and that's an indicator of blood sugar issues, not necessarily a cholesterol issue. We have inflammation of the liver, cirrhosis of the liver. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but if your liver is not functioning properly, diabetes isn't just a pancreas issue. It's also a liver issue. And our liver, if it's not functioning properly, then we're not going to be able to digest carbohydrates and fats properly. And that's really all this is, all diabetes is. All blood sugar issues is making sure that that liver's functioning properly, that we're able to properly digest carbohydrates and fats. So we got to look at cleaning up the liver, and we're going to talk about that. Sleep apnea, can't tell you how many patients come in complaining of sleep apnea or on some type of CPAP machine. That's another symptom of insulin resistance there. PCOS, polycystic ovarian disease. I've got several patients that have come in presenting with PCOS. Again, we have to look at those blood sugars, because if the blood sugars are elevated, if we're insulin resistant, if we're pre-diabetic, then that's a symptom of those things. Atherosclerosis, increased blood clots, and low HDL, which is our good cholesterol, right? So these are all symptoms that may occur. The question is, where are you on this path to diabetes, right? Are we somebody that is trending towards diabetes? That's when we have higher than normal levels of blood sugar, and a good way to measure that or to test that is through a glucometer, a finger prick, where it tells you what your blood sugar are, and to take a fasting blood sugar first thing in the morning, right as soon as you wake up, even before you get out of bed. Just take a look at what are those blood sugars doing. What's that fasting blood sugar? It should be below 100, ideally below 85. What we find, what research says, is that for every point above 85 on our fasting blood glucose, it increases our chance for diabetes by 3%, right? So 86 is 3%, 87 is 6%, 88 is 9%, 90 is 12%, and all on up. You get the idea there. So we've got to look at those fasting glucose and fasting blood sugars, right? See what's going on there. Or are we pre-diabetic? Are we in the early stages of this? That's it's a reversible stage of diabetes, and that's the great thing, is that what we're going to talk about is a lot of this is related to lifestyle issues. So damage is already occurring in the body, but there's time to change course and reverse that damage. Or are we someone that is already in full-blown diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2 diabetes? This disease becomes increasingly aggressive, and overall health deteriorates pretty rapidly when we have this diagnosis of diabetes. So there's two things that we're going to talk about here. Traditional treatment, and here's the problem. Traditional approaches to diabetes attempt to normalize blood sugar levels through medications like metformin or glucophage, either insulin injections or insulin pumps, which lowers the number on a blood glucose test. But the problem is it doesn't address the underlying causes of high blood sugars. It may lower the number on your blood test, but it's not fixing your diabetes, right? Remember, the AMA says that this approach is only about 1% effective, right? And I don't know about you, but I'm not okay with that, right? Like I want to see better results than 1%, right? Matter of fact, the ketogenic diet alone has been proven to have a 60% effective rate in reversing or curing diabetes, right? So there's definitely some things that we can do that that can help to prevent and reverse this. As a matter of fact, if you do what we tell you to do, and you remove the things that we tell you to remove, I can promise you 100% success rate if it's type 2 diabetes, right? The only people who won't get that are the ones who aren't willing to make the lifestyle changes. So, there are some things that have to be done in order to get those results. And so you have to be willing to make those changes if you want the results. So diabetes is not just a blood sugar issue. It's a problem with two major systems within the body. Number one is our hormones. Insulin is a hormone. It's very, very, very important that you understand what hormones do in the body. I don't know about if y'all ever watch television, but I think most Americans, watch TV at some point in time. But it's every other commercial on television right now is a drug commercial. And what do you see them advertising to, especially the men right now? What does it seem like every commercial advertising a drug to a man is about? And it's about low testosterone, right? Women, you see commercials about hormone imbalances and balancing your hormones. So it's important to understand that when insulin goes up, every other hormone goes down, right? Now, guess what? When insulin goes up, it's almost impossible for you to burn fat, or it is physiologically impossible for you to burn fat when our insulin spikes. So, how many of you have tried conventional diets like Weight Watchers or Slim Fast, or know someone who's tried to lose weight but hasn't been able to? I think we all either have experienced that ourselves, or we know someone who has experienced that. Those conventional diets don't work long term, because as soon as you get off the program, you go back to eating insulin foods and you gain all the weight back. I mean, how many of us know somebody that went on a diet, lost 20, 30 pounds, but then you see them 3 months later and they've gained 50 of those 30 pounds back, right? We all know that. So it's a hormone and a nervous system problem, not just a blood glucose issue. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more here. So one of the things that we need to understand is how the body heals. This little funny illustration here, but really kind of hammers home a point. So if we get a cut on our arm and we put a Band-Aid on it, what does the healing? Does the Band-Aid do the healing? If we break our arm and we put it in a cast, does the cast do the healing? No, your body does the healing. Your body heals from above down and inside out. And it starts with the brain and the nervous system, and this communication to the rest of the body. Thought I had another slide of there. So this communication between the brain to the rest of the body. And we have to talk about some anatomy and physiology here about what's going on with this communication process. So our brain is the master system and controller of our body. It's what tells everything else in the body what to do, when to do it, how to do it, kind of thing. And the way that it communicates to the body is via the nervous system, the spinal cord, the nerves that come off the spinal cord and go out to all 70 trillion plus cells in our body. So if there's any type of misalignment in our spine, if our spine gets out of position, gets stuck in a position that it's not supposed to be in, then that's going to create interference within that nervous system, and our body's not going to be able to heal and regulate properly. So as a chiropractor, one of the things that I'm looking at is, what does the alignment of my patient's spine look like? Do we have the ideal alignment of the spine so that we're removing interference, so that the brain can control and regulate properly and can communicate to the body, telling the body what to do, when to do it, how to do it? And one of the things that brain controls and regulates is our endocrine system, our hormones, right? So if there's interference in the nervous system, not only are we going to have symptoms like pain, numbness, tingling, swelling, cramping, weakness, incoordination, right? But we're also going to have visceral type of issues, things like immune issues, endocrine issues, respiratory issues, reproductive issues, because now our body's not able to function at 100%, right? So it's not the Band-Aid that does the healing. It's not the cast that does the healing. It's the body's innate or inborn, our ability to heal from the inside out. And so we have to talk about two things. And there's really two shocking contributors, I guess, if you will, of blood sugar or diabetes problems. And that is what's going on with our hormones and what's going on within our nervous system. So the nervous system, there's two parts of it we need to talk about: our parasympathetic nervous system and our sympathetic nervous system. So if you look at the slide here, on the right, it shows you your sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight nervous system. That's the part of the nervous system that kicks in when we're in a fear mode, right? Which right now, what are most of us in? We're in a fear mode because what are we seeing on television right now? We're seeing spikes in infection rates of this virus. The good news is we are seeing reduced death rates from the virus. So that's good. But if you listen to the media and you watch the news, like all they're talking about, they're propagating this fear, right? This fear of this virus. And so a lot of us are stuck in this sympathetic state where we're constantly in this fight or flight state all day, every day, right? And when we're in fight or flight, what we see is things like pupils dilate, increased heartbeat, our um, inability to digest food, because our body's not worried about digesting food. It's worrying about either fighting the bear in front of us or running away from the bear in front of us, right? It's we stimulate the release of glucose into the bloodstream when we're in a fight or flight nervous system, right? Because our body thinks it needs that sugar, it needs glucose to produce energy for us to be able to fight or flight, right? We secrete adrenaline. We all know adrenaline, that hormone that gives us that rush when something like you're going down the road and somebody slams on their brakes in front of you and you have to slam on yours to keep from hitting them. You get that rush of adrenaline, right? So that's the fight or flight nervous system, which is good. We want to have those things happen when we're in a stress situation, right? So if we're walking through the woods and we come across a bear in the woods, then we have this stress response, this fight or flight response. Now, if we're in the woods by ourselves and we come across the bear, we're probably just going to try to run away from it, get away from it, right? But if you're a parent and you're walking through the woods with your kids and you see the bear, you're going to send the kids running and you're going to try to protect them from it. So we have this fight or flight response. And there's really even a third response that doesn't get talked about very often, but it's the freeze response, right? How many of us know somebody that have been in a situation ourselves where there was an emergency situation or something happened, and instead of fighting or flighting, we just froze. Like the moment was just too big. We didn't know what to do. We've all seen it happen. Either in emergency situations, we see it happening in sporting events, where you get this sympathetic response and your nervous system, your body doesn't know how to process it and you just freeze. So there's fight or flight or freeze when it comes to our sympathetic nervous system. The other part of our central nervous system is our parasympathetic nervous system. And our parasympathetic nervous system is our rest and digest portion of our nervous system. It's what we call the feed and breathe, right? So pupils constrict, we slow down our heart rate and our breathing. We stimulate digestive activity within the digestive system. When we're in that parasympathetic state of relaxation, we inhibit the release of glucose because we don't need to be producing more ATP, which is what glucose in our blood is there to do, is to stimulate the production of ATP, because we don't need that extra energy when we're in that parasympathetic state, right? So it's important that we understand what both of these states are and what their roles and purposes are, because it's important that we're able to balance between the two. We should be able to go in and out of these two states depending upon the situation that we're in. Now, a sympathetic state, a fight or flight response, is really only intended to be a short-term response. It's not intended to be something that we're stuck in for long periods of time, right? But what we see more and more with our patients is, and we're even seeing it in younger and younger demographics, is they're coming in and they've been stuck in this fight or flight response. They've been stuck in this sympathetic state for extended periods of time, and their nervous system and their body is just fatigued. It's worn out. It's shot. And because it's been under this stress for so long, and it's been trying to adapt and cope to this stress for so long, that now it's basically just shut down. And that's when we start to see symptoms like insulin resistance and prediabetes and diabetes. So it's important to understand the role of the nervous system in our body's ability to heal and regulate appropriately. All right. So, what does this have to do with diabetes, and what are things that we can do to naturally manage diabetes or high blood pressure or insulin resistance? So there's a couple of things that I want to talk about just from a lifestyle standpoint. I mentioned that my wife, Paige, is a registered dietitian, and that she and we work together to help educate and empower people to live the healthiest life possible, right? The healthiest version of their life possible. And so what we've done is over the years, we've identified really 5 areas that are essential for good health. And I probably should have made a slide for this, but we'll talk about those 5 areas right quick. And I think some of my slides didn't get saved because you see me kind of scrolling here, and I was looking for a slide that I thought was in there. It's not. But anyway, we'll talk about these 5 essentials of good health. And the first we've kind of already talked about is brain health. If our brain is not healthy and not functioning properly, then our body's not going to be able to heal and regulate properly, because our brain is what controls and coordinates everything else that happens in the body. So we've got to make sure that we have a good, healthy brain, which also means healthy emotions and a healthy emotional state, a healthy mindset, and a mindset of health and healing, and knowing that our body is capable of healing and regulating, and that we have the ability to heal from really anything that attacks our body, whether it's a cut, scrape, a broken bone, or even a disease process, a bacteria, a virus, a pathogen, an external pathogen. Just like right now, the COVID-19 virus, it's important to understand that the virus is not the problem. It's your body's ability to adapt and respond to the virus that's the problem. If you're healthy, your body has the ability to control and regulate and adapt and respond in a way that you should be able to overcome the virus. Right now, if we're not healthy and stuck in this sympathetic state that we talked about a minute ago, and our our brain's not able to control and regulate properly, and our body's not able to heal and regulate properly, then yes, we're going to have issues when it comes to fighting off these viruses and bacterias and pathogens. So the number one essential to good health is proper brain health. Number 2, we talk about, and we've already talked about this, is spinal health, and making sure that our spine is aligned properly so that we're taking stress and tension off the nervous system, so that the brain can communicate and control and regulate what's going on within the body properly. Number 3 is proper diet and nutrition, right? So we mentioned a minute ago that the ketogenic diet has a 60% success rate in reversing or curing diabetes. So if you say, well, Dr. Dykes, what is a proper diet or a proper way to eat for someone that has maybe is insulin resistant or has high blood sugars or has been diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, then look at the ketogenic diet. We've got to remove carbohydrates from the body. We've got to clean up the liver so that the liver can start to convert fats into fuel, because that's really what our body is designed to run off, not carbohydrates, not sugars, but oxygen and fats. And if we're not oxygenated and staying oxygenated, then we can't burn fats. We can't turn fats into fuel for the body. So we have to look at that. So when we start talking about nutrition and diet, if you look at the food pyramid and what your traditional medical doctors are telling you to eat, it really needs to be turned upside down. What they're telling you to eat when it comes to grains and breads, those types of things, those things are just only going to spike your insulin, which is going to put you into an insulin resistant state over time. And it's going to eventually lead to and cause diabetes because you have this elevated blood sugar over long periods of times, right? So we have to eat higher proteins, and my recommendation for that is uh, if you are trying to just maintain a certain body mass, then I say 50% of your body weight in grams of protein on a daily basis. If you are trying to lose weight, then we need to be eating 75% of our body weight in grams of protein on a daily basis. If you are trying to actually build muscle mass, lean muscle, which is extremely important as we age, that we have this lean muscle mass to be able to convert fats into fuels, right? Because muscle burns fat, then I recommend um, equal amounts of protein to your body weight. So, I'm a 185-pound dude. I work out pretty much 5 days a week. I'm trying to build muscle mass and maintain lean muscle mass. And so, for someone like myself, I'd recommend eating 185 grams of protein on a daily basis, right? So, protein is extremely important part of that diet when it comes to building and maintaining muscle, which is extremely important as we age, because the more of it we have, the healthier we are. The studies show increased muscle mass equates to longevity of life, right? So nutrition, we said a healthy brain and mindset. We said a healthy spine and nervous system. We said the third essential to good health is proper diet and nutrition. The fourth thing that we talk about, and we mentioned it just a second ago, is movement and exercise. We have to be exercising and moving our body. Our bodies are made for movement. And if we want to be able um, to get out of this insulin resistant state, then we've got to be to burn up some of the glucose or sugar that's in the system, and get the body back to burning fats instead of sugars and carbohydrates for fuel, right? So it's very important that we are moving and exercising on a regular basis. I say at least 3 times a week of high intensity interval training for 20 to 30 minutes, 3 times a week is a minimum requirement. Now, I personally like and recommend weightlifting for really anybody of any age, because that's how we build muscle, and muscle is extremely important when it comes to the aging process and in burning um, fats for fuel and reducing the insulin resistance that we have going on in the body. So exercise, movement, that's the fourth essential for good health. And then the fifth thing that we talk about is cleaning up our environment. So we're exposed to toxins on a daily basis, things that are in our air from pollutants from vehicles. And if you live here in Tuscaloosa, we have all these plants like Mercedes, Goodrich, Nucor, right? All these different plants that are putting pollutants out into the air, and we're constantly breathing that stuff in. And again, going back to the role of the liver in this whole process, is that if the liver is gummed up, if the liver's stopped up and it's not able to convert and detox the body, and it's not able to convert carbohydrates, we're not able to break down carbohydrates and fats, right? Then that affects um, this whole blood sugar issue that we have going on. So we've got to make sure that our liver is healthy and able to function like it's supposed to, in order for us to be able to process carbohydrates and sugars properly, right? Your liver is like the example I like to use is your liver is like a pool filter. So if you've ever had a pool, or if you've ever been in a pool, the water from the pool is constantly being filtered through a filtration system and circulated back into the pool. Now, in the fall, when the leaves start to fall off the trees and they get in the pools, it can back up that filtration system. It can clog up that filtration system, and now that water that is supposed to be getting the debris that's supposed to be getting filtered out of the pool can't be filtered out because it's clogged up and slowed up by all the leaves. So if you're not cleaning the pool regularly and getting those leaves out of there, then the filtration system can't do its job, right? Well, the same thing with our liver is what filters all of the blood in the body, right? So it takes about 20 minutes for blood to circulate through the body, and it's going through that liver and getting filtered. And there is a primary detoxification process that occurs the first time that it goes through the liver. And if the liver can't detox and pull those toxins out of there the first time, it goes back through the liver a second time through a secondary detoxification process. And I'm simplifying this, but I want you to get this. I want you to understand this. When it goes through that secondary detoxification process, if the liver still can't filter it out, still can't detox it, then what happens is our body will take that toxin and sequester it. And so what happens, there's really two ways or two areas that our body sequesters toxins. Number one is fatty tissue, right? So where do we tend to see a lot of cancers occur, especially in women? And that is breast tissue, right? Why? Because breast tissue is fat, right? So what happens is, and there's multiple thought processes behind this, but one is, and what we're talking about here, is the liver can't filter out these toxins, so it sequesters that toxin, sequesters it within fatty tissue, and it stores it in areas of the body, right? So in women, we have breast tissue, we have tissue around the midsection, tissue in the buttocks and thighs, right? For men, we typically, when we're talking about fat or adipose tissue, it's in our midsection, right? The belly, the beer gut, right? And which we're seeing more and more now is men with these pendulous fatty abdomens that have never drank beer, but they have that same presentation. And we're even seeing a disease process called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is cirrhosis of the liver, which used to only be seen in alcoholics, but now we're seeing it in individuals that have never consumed alcohol, because it's related to diet and nutrition and lifestyle. And that is the key here. That is the key point. We have to look at a lifestyle change in order to correct some of these things. And so again, just to recap, the five things that we, our five essentials, the five areas we've identified as essential to good health is: number one, brain health, mental health. Number two is spine and nervous system. Number three is nutrition, diet and nutrition. And that also includes not only what we're eating or not eating, but how are we supplementing the body. And we're going to talk about some supplements, some things in a minute that that help with improving blood sugars, certain things that we can do to help, nutrients that we can take to help with balancing those blood sugars. The fourth essential we talked about is exercise and movement. And then the fifth thing that we talked about is limiting or reducing our toxic exposure. So let's talk about what are some things that we can take supplement wise to help with balancing those blood sugars. And this is, so undoubtedly some of my slides did not get saved, because I know there were some more slides that that were going on here, but I have my notes here, so we will we'll just go from my notes and I'll try to get that saved and updated. All right. So, what are some of the things that we can do as naturally to help stop or reverse diabetes or insulin um, resistance here? Um, there's many underlying causes of, especially type 2 diabetes. Um, poor diet, being overweight, uh, high levels of inflammation, a sedentary lifestyle, um, high amounts of stress. So, matter of fact, my wife and I were just talking about this earlier today. I was watching a sermon that had been sent to me. And I asked my wife, I said, why is it that most pastors seem to be overweight? I was watching this guy. He's preaching an excellent message, but he was obese. And her answer was stress. She said, pastors are under a lot of stress. And so she said, I think that just the amount of stress that they're under leads to the fact that most of them tend to be um, obese or overweight, which is ironic to me because they talk about spiritual health, but the Bible is very clear that we are supposed to maintain our physical health as well. But stress is a huge factor in blood sugar and insulin resistance and diabetes. Genetics plays a role in it. I mentioned earlier that my grandmother was diabetic. My mother is diabetic. And therefore, me looking at this and going, hey, there's a family history of diabetes here. I have to start taking measures and steps now to help prevent myself from becoming diabetic. So, genetics plays a huge role in diabetes. But the thing about genetics that we need to understand there is genes are like light switches. We can choose which genes get expressed or turned on and which ones get turned off based on lifestyle choices that we make, going back to those 5 essentials of good health that we just talked about. Um, History of high blood pressure and heart disease can lead to diabetes. Hormonal imbalances, which is, we said that that's a huge part of this insulin resistance, is understanding hormones and how our hormones work, and understanding that if insulin is up, that it reduces every other hormone in the body, whether it's testosterone or progesterone or estrogen or any other hormone there. So increased insulin within the bloodstream is going to affect or reduce the body's ability to make or express those other hormones. And we talked about being toxic exposure, being exposed to toxins, viruses, and harmful chemicals. And there's even medications that can cause diabetes because they disrupt or interrupt the insulin production process within the bodies. So how do we reverse this? So step one is we have to remove foods that cause diabetes or cause blood sugar to spike. So certain foods negatively affect your blood sugar levels. They cause inflammation, trigger immune responses. To reverse diabetes naturally, the first step is to remove these foods from your diet. So things like refined sugars. And I know some of this is elementary, and some of this is probably some stuff that if you are diabetic, or if you have loved ones that are diabetic, you're like, hey, we know that sugar, we got to stay away from sugar. But refined sugars, they're horrible. They're the worst because they rapidly spike your glucose. Sodas, fruit juices, sugary beverages, teas, sweet teas, those are the worst culprits. These forms of sugar, they enter the bloodstream rapidly, and they cause extreme elevations in glucose. Even natural sweeteners like raw honey and maple syrup are better options, but they can still affect blood sugar levels. So you have to be careful in using those and how you use those, and checking your blood sugars to make sure that it's not spiking your blood sugar when you use those. So your best option is just to switch to a sweetener, a natural sweetener that won't have as much of an impact on your blood sugar, like stevia, right? Definitely recommend staying away from artificial sweeteners because the research is abundantly clear that those are carcinogens or cancer-causing agents, right? So no natural sweeteners like the Splendas, the blue or pink packets, right? Uh, Second thing that we need to stay away from is grains. Grains, especially gluten-containing grains like wheat, contain large amounts of carbohydrates that get broken down into sugar within just a few minutes of consumption. Gluten can cause intestinal inflammation, which affects hormones again. So hormones like cortisol and leptin can lead to spikes in blood sugar. Recommend moving all grains from your diet for at least 90 days. Uh, Give your body a chance to adjust to during that healing time, that healing program, and then you can reintroduce them, bringing in some sprouted grains back into your diet in small amounts, just to see how your body responds to it, right? So removing grains. Milk is another one of the foods that we talk about removing. Conventional cow's milk and dairy products should definitely be eliminated, especially for people with type 1 diabetes. Dairy can be a fantastic food for balancing blood sugars if it comes from like goats or sheeps or A2 cows, but stay away from all other forms of dairy because the A1 casein produced by conventional cows will harm the body and trigger an immune response similar to gluten. So when buying dairy, only purchase raw or organic products from pasture-raised animals, or even better, just stay away from conventional cow's milk altogether. The third food that we talk about eliminating is alcohol. Alcohol can dangerously increase blood sugars and lead to liver toxicity. Research has been published that shows that there was a 43% increased incident of diabetes associated with heavy consumption of alcohol, which is defined as 3 or more drinks per day. So beer, sweet liquors are especially high in carbohydrates and should be avoided. The fourth thing that we talk about removing or eliminating is genetically modified foods. So GMO corn, soy, canola, they've all been linked to kidney and liver disease and may promote diabetes. So I suggest removing all GMO foods and all packaged foods from your diet. Opt for products that are labeled organic or GMO free, and eat as many raw vegetables, raw foods as you can. The closer you can get it to the source that it was grown, the better, right? And then the fifth thing that we talk about, and the fifth food that we highly recommend removing, is hydrogenated oils. So hydrogenated or rancid oils from your diet, those include vegetable oils, soybean oils, cottonseed oils, canola oils. These oils are processed oils. They're treated at high temperatures. They're combined with bleaching agents. They have artificial dyes. So consuming these oils has been linked to a number of health concerns, including diabetes. So the first step in reversing or curing diabetes or high blood sugar or insulin resistance is got to look at removing these foods from our diet. Now, step 2 is incorporating foods into our diet that help to lower our blood sugar or reverse or prevent type 2 diabetes. So these are some of the foods that we recommend. Foods that are high in fiber. Research shows that 90% of the US population doesn't consume enough fiber on a daily basis. So high fiber foods help slow down glucose absorption. They regulate your blood sugar levels and support the detoxification process that we were talking about a little bit earlier. Aim to eat at least 30 grams of fiber a day. That can come from vegetables like Brussels sprouts, peas, artichokes, avocados, berries, nuts, seeds, especially chia seeds and flax seeds, right? So high fiber foods, foods high in chromium. Chromium is a nutrient that involved in the normal carbohydrate and lipid metabolism. Remember, we said liver, we have to have a healthy functioning liver in order to be able to convert carbohydrates and fats. And so foods high in chromium can help improve the glucose tolerance factor in your body, and they can naturally balance out the blood glucose levels. It plays a role in insulin pathways, helping to bring glucose in and out of our cells. It can be used for body energy. Um, broccoli has high amounts of chromium, but you can also find it in raw cheeses, green beans, yeast, and grass-fed beef, right? So again, going back to um, non-GMO, grass-fed foods, especially when we're talking about meats, beef, chicken, pork, make sure that it is it's grass-fed, right? There used to be a saying that you are what you eat. The saying now is you are what you eat, right? So if you are eating cows that are fed high grain diets, you're not eating pasture or grass fed beef. Um, there's a lot of negative side effects there. The third food that we talk about is magnesium rich foods. So magnesium can help regulate blood sugar levels because of the role it plays in glucose metabolism. Again, research shows that diabetes is frequently associated with a magnesium deficiency. So eating magnesium rich foods like spinach, chard, pumpkin seeds, almonds, yogurt, black beans, those can all improve type 2 diabetes symptoms. Healthy fats, super important that we're getting healthy fats into our diet, those medium chain fatty acids that are found in like coconut and red palm oils. They can help balance blood sugar levels. They serve as preferred fuel source for your body rather than sugar. Remember, we said earlier, your body is really designed to run off of fat and oxygen and not sugar and carbohydrates. So using coconut milk, almond milk, ghee, grass-fed butter, all those can help balance out your blood sugar levels because they include those healthy fats, those medium chain triglycerides. Some research actually suggests that high fat, low carb diet, known as the ketogenic diet or keto diet, we talked about a minute ago, is a novel approach to reversing diabetes naturally. Although you don't technically or necessarily have to go into ketosis to achieve the benefits of healthy fats in treating diabetes. It has been shown to be 60, just the ketogenic diet has been proven to have a 60% effective rate in reversing high blood sugars and diabetes and insulin resistance. So we mentioned a second ago, clean proteins. We talked about eating protein and how I recommend getting 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat, per pound of body weight, right? So eating protein, it has a good effect on blood glucose and can slow down the absorption of sugar. So that's the big part of it. It slows down how your body processes and absorbs sugar. Some of the best sources of clean proteins include wild caught fish. Like a wild caught salmon, not a farm raised or I'm trying to remember what the other terminology is, but you want to make sure that it's wild caught fish, right? It's high in those omega-3 fatty acids that reduce inflammation. Grass-fed beef, again, high in omega-3 fatty acids. Organic chicken, eggs, organic eggs, high in omega-3s. Our American diet, we want to have an omega-3 to omega-6 ratio of 1 to 1 is ideal. All right. The American diet, though, has an omega-3 to omega-6 ratio of like 1 to 30 or 1 to 60. I forget what the exact number is. I want to say 1 to 30. It may be even as high as 1 to 60. But when we get out of balance like that, we increase those omega-3s in the body. We actually increase that inflammatory process. Omega-3s help to reduce that inflammatory process that occurs in the body. So we got to make sure that we're getting plenty of omega-3 fatty acids. And one way we can get that is through supplementing with a fish oil, right? Foods with low glycemic load. The glycemic index of food tells you about the blood glucose raising potential of the food. So foods that have high glycemic index are foods that get converted into sugar after being eaten more quickly than low glycemic index foods. So if you're fighting diabetes or high glucose or insulin resistance, stick to low glycemic foods like non-starchy vegetables, stone fruits and berries, nuts, seeds, avocados, coconut, organic meat, eggs, wild caught fish, raw. Um, if you're going to consume dairy, raw pasture to dairy, right? Although we said a minute ago, we just recommend staying away from dairy altogether. So one of the benefits of these foods is that they generally promote weight loss, which is a major factor in reversing diabetes. Studies show a study following 306 diabetic individuals found that losing weight under a structured program with the supervision of a primary care physician resulted in almost half of the participants going into total diabetes remission. This means they were able to stay off their medications permanently, assuming they continued to eat the way that they ate, and their quality of life also improved by over 7 points on average for the patient on the dietary regimen, while it decreased by about 3 points for the control group. So that's a 10-point swing when you look at it. Those that were eating the healthy, balanced diet versus a control group that wasn't. So what are some, we talked about foods that we need to stay away from and not to eat. We talked about foods that are healthy and good for us and can help with reducing that blood sugar. But what are some of the supplements that we can take to help with reducing our blood sugars and balancing our blood sugars naturally without the use of drugs or medications, right? So the first one that we talk about is chromium picolinate. Taking 200 micrograms of chromium picolinate 3 times a day with meals can help improve insulin sensitivity. So a review published in Diabetes Technology and Therapeutics evaluated 13 studies that reported significant improvement in glycogen control and substantial reductions in hyperglycemia and hyperinsulinemia after patients used chromium picolinate supplementation. Other positive outcomes from supplementing with chromium picolinate included reduced cholesterol and triglyceride levels and reduced requirements for hypoglycemic medication. The second supplement that we talk about is cinnamon. Cinnamon has the ability to lower blood sugar levels and improve your sensitivity to insulin. So a study conducted at Western University of Health Sciences in Pomona, California, found that the consumption of cinnamon is associated with a statistically significant decrease in plasma glucose levels, LDL cholesterol, and triglyceride levels. So cinnamon consumption helps increase HDL cholesterol levels. So to take advantage of the many health benefits of cinnamon, add 1 teaspoon to food, either a smoothie or tea. You can also take 1 or 2 drops of cinnamon essential oil, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, internally by adding it to food or tea, or combine 3 drops of cinnamon oil with half a teaspoon of coconut oil and massage it into your wrist and abdomen. We're going to talk about essential oils and how we use those in helping to balance blood sugars as well. So we mentioned fish oil a minute ago. Taking a fish oil supplement can help improve markers of diabetes by reducing triglyceride levels and raising HDL cholesterol levels. Research published in the Journal of Research in Medical Sciences shows that omega-3 fatty acids found in fish oil are necessary for proper insulin function, preventing insulin intolerance and reducing inflammation. So to use fish oil as a natural remedy for diabetes, take 1,000 milligrams daily. Again, you got to know your sourcing on these supplements. I do want to mention that you have to make sure that you're getting whole food supplements, organic if possible supplements, making sure that you're getting them in a form that your body that's what's called bioavailable, meaning that your body can take that supplement and convert it and use it properly. The fourth supplement that we talk about is alpha lipoic acid. So alpha lipoic acid is an antioxidant that helps turn glucose into fuel for the body. It effectively improves insulin sensitivity and reduces symptoms of diabetic neuropathies, such as weakness, pain, and numbness that caused by nerve damage. Our body does make alpha lipoic acid and can be found in some food sources like broccoli, spinach, and tomatoes. But taking an ALA supplement will increase the amount that circulates in your body, which can be extremely beneficial when trying to reverse diabetes naturally. And then the fifth supplement that we talk about is what's called a bitter melon extract. Bitter melon helps lower glucose levels and it regulates the body's use of insulin. Studies have shown that bitter melon extract can help reduce and manage symptoms of diabetes, including insulin resistance, heart complications, kidney damage, blood vessel damage, eye disorders, and hormonal regulations. So, those are we mentioned 5 foods to stay away from. We mentioned 5 foods to incorporate into your diet. We also mentioned 5 supplements that we recommend that you take. And the next step is we talk about exercise. We kind of talked about exercise a minute ago, but let's talk about exercise for reducing blood sugar and chronic disease. Exercise can help reverse diabetes naturally or delay type 2 diabetes while also positively affecting blood pressure, heart health, cholesterol levels, and overall quality of life. So exercise naturally supports your metabolism by burning fat and building lean muscle. To prevent and reverse diabetes, make exercise a part of your daily routine. I personally am not someone that inherently likes to exercise, but I understand the benefits of exercise, and so therefore I make it a priority in my life. You can call my wife just about any day of the week, Monday through Friday, at around noon, lunchtime, and ask her, "Where is your husband?" And 99% of the time, she's going to be right, because she's going to say he's at the gym, because it is just built into the structure of my day that at noon on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I am going to go to the gym and I'm going to get a workout in. I'm going to exercise. So you've got to make it a priority. So exercise naturally supports your metabolism by burning fat and building lean muscle. To prevent and reverse diabetes, make it a part of your daily routine. This doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend time at the gym. Just simple forms of physical activity, like getting outside and walking for 20, 30 minutes. Like I mentioned earlier, getting your heart rate up. I personally like and personally recommend high intensity interval training, HIIT training, as your exercise of choice. The research shows that seems to be the best form of exercise, and doing that at least 3 days a week for 20 to 30 minutes is really all you need. But even things like yoga, stretching, there's at-home options. You don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for a gym membership to go to a CrossFit gym like I do. But I like the structure and the accountability that comes with that. So that's my choice or my method of exercising. But even if you can't afford that, or you're self-disciplined enough to be able to exercise at home by yourself, I'm not, so I don't, then just doing 20 to 30 minutes of physical activity that gets that heart rate up is all it takes. So just to kind of recap what we've talked about tonight, more than 30 million people, nearly 10% of the population, has diabetes. This includes children. Almost 7.2 million of those people aren't even aware that they have diabetes. So I think we mentioned earlier, there's nearly 10 million undiagnosed cases of diabetes in the United States right now. We talked about there's 80, I was trying to remember what the number was, 86 million Americans or adults that are pre-diabetic, and 9 out of 10 of those don't even know that they have it, right? It's the 7th leading cause of death and costs hundreds of billions of dollars per year. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier or not, but a diabetic spends 2.3 times more on healthcare costs than a non-diabetic. So there's a huge financial burden when it comes to the healthcare cost of diabetes and the cost of living with diabetes, right? the important thing that I think to take away from this is that in order to reverse diabetes naturally, you got to remove foods like refined sugars, grain, conventional cow's milk, alcohol, GMO foods, and hydrogenated oils. You've got to incorporate healthy foods like foods high in fiber, chromium, magnesium, healthy fats, and clean proteins, along with foods that are low glycemic loads, um, like we talked about earlier. Taking supplements for the diabetes and following a I'm not going to say a ketogenic diet, but a keto-like diet. You don't necessarily have to get into ketosis, but a high protein, high fat, low carbohydrate diet, and then exercising to help maintain those blood sugars, right? I There are some specific supplements and some specific dietary guidelines that we make dependent upon what's going on with each patient, because each patient is an individual and each individual is different. So these are things that I mentioned that tend to work for the majority of our patients. However, there are some patients that we have to be more aggressive with, and we have to look at some other things that are going on in the body and really try to figure out, what specifically works for them, and we're able to customize plans for them to help reverse diabetes and high blood sugar and insulin resistance. But hopefully I've given you information tonight that you're able to take and begin to make some changes to your diet and lifestyle. And you understand that, hey, diabetes is more than just high blood glucose or high blood sugar, that diabetes is really um, a problem with balancing our hormones and what's going on within our nervous system, right? And if we get these two things corrected, if we get the nervous system functioning properly so that the brain can control and regulate properly, and that it can send and receive information from the body properly, then we're able to heal and regulate. And when we're able to do that, our endocrine system and our hormones can function properly. So now our body can begin to, one, if we're not producing insulin, we can maybe start to produce insulin. Two, if we are not, if we're insulin resistant and insulin is not getting into the cells, then we can start to straighten some of that up, and the body can control and regulate that a little bit better. So our brain, our nervous system, is the master system controller of the body. If it's not functioning right, nothing else in the body is going to function properly. So we have to make sure that we have a healthy brain, a healthy nervous system, and that nervous system is controlling and regulating what's going on within our endocrine system and our hormones properly, and that our liver's functioning properly in order for us to be able to convert and process fats and carbohydrates properly, right? So I hope that I've given you some good information. If you want to leave me some feedback on here, that would be much appreciated. I am going to give you my information as far as who I am and where you can find me. Um, Again, I'm Dr. Greg Dykes. I am with Skelton Chiropractic. Again, I'm a chiropractor and wellness doctor. So, what does that mean? It means that I work with patients not only to help get them out of pain when it comes to neck pain, back pain, migraine headaches, some of the most common things that we see here in our office, but I also work with patients to help them live a life of abundance, of joy, of health, right? A quality of life. And that's where it comes being a wellness doctor, is to help people get well and stay well for the rest of their lives through those 5 essentials that we talked about a minute ago. So if you've heard something tonight that helped you, please share this with your friends and family. I'm going to make this available on my YouTube channel, so I'll send you the link to that. Share it with friends and family. If you or someone you know is struggling with blood sugar issues, and they would like to come in for a consultation and see how we can help them, I'm more than happy to do that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to make you an offer tonight that is I don't do this very often, but for this webinar, especially since we are in this this unique time in our history where, again, we talked about that sympathetic nervous system and how when we're in a state of stress, that sympathetic nervous system, goes into overload. We can get stuck in that sympathetic state, that fight or flight state. Getting that nervous system balanced is extremely important. So what I'm doing for this webinar tonight is, if you are on this webinar, or if you share this webinar with friends and family, and you want to schedule an appointment with me, when you call into the office, if you mention this webinar, you're going to get that initial consultation for $47. Now, normally that's a $230 value. That includes consultation, exam, any x-rays that are necessary. This does exclude Medicare. Unfortunately, there's just some laws that we can't offer any kind of enticement or incentive to Medicare patients. But if you are a Medicare patient, don't worry. There's ways for us to legally help you, and we'll get you in as well. Just call me and we'll work that out. But I am going to send you a link to this video. I'm also going to send you a link to my my calendar where you can go on and register for an appointment with me there. This offer it's only good for the next 10 days, now through not this Friday, but the next Friday is when this offer expires. So if you do want to take advantage of it, please make sure that you do it by next Friday. All right, I'm going to open this up to those that are on the webinar. If you have any questions, just feel free to post a question, a comment, and then I'll be glad to answer those. Let's see if I can open this up here. All right, so I don't see anybody post anything. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording here. Thank you for joining me tonight. Again, I'm Dr. Greg Dykes with Skelton Chiropractic. My website is healthishope.com, and our phone number there is 205-409-8469. Those are the best ways to get in touch with me. You can also email me. My email address is drdykes@healthishope.com. I probably should have put that on the slide as well, but that is a good way to get in touch with me as well. All right, I hope you enjoyed. Have a great night. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.